Hello, this is the next video in the series of my Pantograph Design School. You will need to watch the first two videos to get a sense of what I'm doing, but in this one I wanted to basically give an overview, because I always find that quite helpful, so to kind of see what you're aiming for, see what the entire process is. So hopefully after watching the first two videos you'll get a sense of what's going on. But it will still look a little bit confusing, and I'll hopefully explain that in the future. So I have been meaning to make a very good Halloween pantograph for quite a long time, because I see lots of great Halloween quilts, and all the ones I had before were just quite too basic for how good these quilts are and the range of Halloween fabric that's out there. So this was drawn on last Sunday on the sofa with my little cat. So I took a quick video to show. So, not the professionalism of actually my physical studio, but this is how I like to draw. So on the sofa, laptop folded on my lap, keyboard next to me, and with music on, and yeah, it is the joy of drawing. Okay, so quick skip ahead to the ending, and this is what I drew. My intention was to make an extended width pantograph, so that's why I began with an artboard that's 120 by 15 inches. But I ended up changing my mind, so it's actually just a very wide edge to edge, because edge to edges, they have to be, you've got a very strict row height, but you don't actually have a strict row width, and I find that quite exciting, because they're all 12 by 12 inches, but why are they not 50 by 12 inches? Anyway, that's a later discussion. So to begin with, I'm going to draw a web. So I've used the pencil tool. Again, look at the previous videos to get a quick refresh on tools. I always draw by first creating a path. So by path, I mean a one-line drawing. And then when I've got a one-line drawing, which is never good, I'll edit the individual anchor points to make this drawing good. So anchor points are also interchangeably known as either vector points or nodes. So whatever software you're using, they're all the same thing. So I've drawn a sort of figure of eight-ish, 8 or 9, and then I'm filling in the shape with a web. So you'll see that I'm drawing this in stages and then connecting the individual lines. So to connect the individual lines, I've highlighted the start and end of the anchor points from the two shapes that I want to join. And I've highlighted them by pressing A, which is the direct selection tool. Again, refresh other video on tools. Once they're both selected, I'm going to press Ctrl J on my keyboard, and that joins the line. So you'll see me do this again and again and again and again. So everything is just cutting up a line, joining together lines. Yeah. After this, I'm just going to keep editing the shape. This is the bit that takes ages when drawing. So I'm going to play around with adding and removing individual anchor points with the Add and Remove Anchor Point tool, which I'm getting by pressing plus and minus on my keyboard. And then I want to make sure that the lines stitch correctly. So by that I mean when the sew head changes direction, so I'm making sure that there's an anchor point on the straight lines and the curved lines of the webs to make sure that the sew head will stitch the curved point in exactly the right place. And in proper Blue Peter style, I made a few webs earlier. So now I've got several shapes to work from that I'm basically just going to join up, and that's how you make a pantograph. The next thing I'm going to do is draw the spider, because every web needs a spider, obviously. So I'm going to draw a shape, and I have practiced quite a few spiders, so don't think that I can just do this, because it took me a while. So I'm going to draw my spider, and then I want to copy that so that I want my spider to be symmetrical. So I'm going to highlight my one half of my spider. I'm going to press Object, Transform, Reflect, then Copy. And then I've got this mirrored reflection, which I'll move to where I want it, and then I'm going to highlight the two ends and press Ctrl J to join together the two mirrored shapes. And then I'm going to keep editing. Now, for the spider's head, I'm going to cheat because I want to use the circle tool rather than drawing it myself. So I've drawn a circle, and then I'll cut up that circle using the cut tool so that I can join it to the spider. Now, personally, I really can't stand when Longarm quilting patterns will stitch a circle and the points of the circle don't match, so it's not filled in. So note that I'm going to make sure that the ends of the circle meet the opposite side of the spider. So that means that we get in a filled in circle for the head, so like a loop. And then I'm going to keep playing and eventually decide that I don't like the shape of the head, delete the circle and then just draw it anyway. But just note that there's a loop, and yeah. So now we have our spider, we now need to move on to the next step, which is joining together all the webs. To design pantographs, I do a lot of copy and pasting, and it's because these are individual motifs that I might like to use again elsewhere in the design. So before I connect it all together, I want to make sure I keep the original shape. It's also in case I edit a shape too far and then I stop liking it, and so I still want to keep the original. So here I've got my individual webs and my spider, and I've copied and pasted them so I can work from the pasted shapes to begin, so I can join them all together. So first I'm going to roughly place them, and then the artboard is useful here because I know that the artboard is 15 inches in height. So when they're placed, I want to join them. To join them, I'm pressing Ctrl J again, so I'm going to link up the start and the end of each shape. So now my two webs, which is actually three webs here, become one line rather than three individual shapes. I also want the pantograph to nest well, and this is obviously really important. So to do this, I'm going to copy and paste in a different way, which is all to achieve very good nesting. So I know that this looks really confusing, and so there will be a video on just how to nest a pantograph. But for now, and in short, I'm going to copy the drawing so the bottom of my drawing can nest in with the top. So by having an exact vertical repeat, I've then got a gap which I'll fill in. So to make the page less confusing, because right here there's a lot of webs, and I need to know what I want as a guide and what I want to, so what will be deleted and what I want to work from. So I'm always going to change the colour of the guide as that's going to be deleted. For here I'm going to change it to red, and so that means the red will be deleted and the black I'm going to work from. So this saves you the mistake of editing two different drawings. Sorry, that's quite confusing, the way I stated that. Now that I've got the boundaries outlined, I can continue drawing. So this is exactly the same process as drawing the web. So draw a line, edit the individual anchor points by adding some, removing some, playing with the handles and moving where the points are. But this does have the very important addition of ensuring the end of my line drawing is in the correct place, by which I mean the beginning of the next web that I want to connect the line to. And basically that's it. The whole thing is quite a repetitive process, and so the thing that's most important are the tools. So I don't really know what to make videos on. Yeah. So for now, I've time-lapsed the rest of it so you can see the entire process kind of from start to finish. So note that I'm just filling in all the blank areas, often by cutting up a path and then adding a bit, joining back to the path. So while the time lapse is going, I just wanted to bring up a few other points. So I've extended the artboard, so the white box that's in the background, I've made, because it was 15 and now I've made it like 30 something I think. So that's just because it's easier to now see the drawing on the white rather than the grey, and because the drawing is the size that I want it, like all the shapes are placed in the areas that I want them, I no longer need the artboard as a guide, as the red copy and pasted drawings now do that. And another thing, maybe it's just because I'm not that skilled a longarm quilter,
But generally I try to make sure that all my pantographs don't have any like vertical points that have to match with 100% accuracy. So in this panto, typically, I actually couldn't help it, as otherwise each row looked too clearly like a row. So there are a couple of points that have to match, but because of this, I'll sell it as an intermediate pantograph. But generally, mine don't have matching row points, and it's because I use them in my studio, and in a stitch out, obviously the rows don't repeat with the same accuracy as a digital drawing does. So I will often not use a pantograph if it requires exact row matching, but I know a lot of you do, and as I say, maybe I'm just not as skilled, or more likely far too lazy, far too impatient. A lot of my points do match horizontally though, so in this pantograph, one pass will go back to the previous web and then have to match a point, so this is fine, although I try to make sure it's points that are matching, not an exact stitch over of a line, just in case there's been any shrinkage whilst like stitching out the pass. I also delete, then recopy and paste the designs that I'm working on quite a lot, and I always change the new copy that's going to be deleted to red, or to a colour. So that's just because the red rows are immediately out of date as soon as I begin editing the black. And another point is, although this is very obvious to me, I want you all to notice just how long that this has taken. So this is time-lapsed at either 400, 800 or 1200 times, and even then I didn't film the entire drawing process, and a lot of what I did film has been cut as well. So if there are any of you that are learning from these videos, and I actually really hope that there are, at least some of you, and more over time, then if you have a goal for an hour and you hate what you've made, just keep going, keep editing your shape. It will take longer than an hour. And yeah, so there are a few points in here, again and again, where I draw, then delete, and then draw, then delete, and draw, then delete, and continue with that. And I do that until I'm happy with it. So my background is in painting and printmaking, so I went to Glasgow School of Art, but since art school I have been illustrating a lot, and even then none of my shapes are good in the beginning. They all need heavy editing, so don't be discouraged. Drawing is really hard. I am also constantly zooming in and out so I can see the drawing up close to edit all the points, to make sure the point is exactly where I want it to be, but also I want to zoom out so I can continue seeing the overall design. And then general notes on pantograph design, and I'm kind of filling in time here, but this is what I've learned in the past 5 years or so of doing this. So firstly, I want the stitch out to be a balance of quite evenly quilted all over. So no big gaps in the drawing and nowhere too dense. So I've got one with squirrels, which is a great example of this. So the drawing is good, but there's a huge gap in the squirrel belly, but the eyes are very detailed. So what that actually means is you can't stitch it too large as the belly gap gets too big, but you can't shrink the design too much either, as then you lose too much detail and the eyes are too densely stitched. So I'm going to edit that design before selling it on my site, and a few others too, and re-release them new and improved. So I've basically just learned a lot over the past few years of doing this, and the squirrel, which I think is called Autumn, just because of like alphabetically ordering stuff on different sites. But squirrel is still fine, and it works as pantograph. It's just not as technically good for this reason, and it annoys me. And this has been a bit of the delay in uploading more, because I've not been able to commit to abandon them entirely, and you do still buy them and I still get good feedback, but I'm just an absolute perfectionist. But I think everyone's the same with skills that they improve on over time. So again, do not make any points, try to make as few points as possible that require vertical matching. I have already said this, but it is worth repeating. And then final thing is to pay attention to scale, because otherwise my drawings have a habit of just growing. Now finally, when I'm happy, I'm going to save it as an Illustrator 8 file and go back to the previous videos to hear me repeat that again and again. I'm going to put it through Art and Stitch, test out the path to see how it's going to stitch, convert it to a PAT file because I've got an Innova, then I always test stitching it out prior to selling it or putting it on a customer quilt. So this video is already incredibly long, so I'm not going to film too much of this. So, but thank you to everyone who stuck it out to the end. I have drawn 2 Halloween pantographs. They've been in my head for quite a long time, and it feels very good to get them out on paper. Obviously not actual paper, but yeah.
Right, and that's it. So hopefully you found that helpful, like in some way, if a bit confusing to watch. That this is on the Dastardly Quilt Studio website, and soon it'll be on others as well. I am considering selling Illustrator files, so just like the individual motifs. I'll put a quick thing on the screen. So that to kind of remove one of the barriers of drawing, so you can kind of just play around with the figures and then kind of put them together yourself, if you're just to make it a little bit easier to begin with. I might just put this up for quite cheap, just to see what the response is. But tell me if that's useful. And yeah, as ever, there's a reason that this is all done for free, because I basically just don't have any time. So therefore don't expect any sort of regularity with these videos, but I've had quite a good response so far, and yeah, so I'm going to keep going, but it will take a while, obviously, because I am who I am. As ever, subscribe, because I will subscribe to the mailing list on the website, because I will email you whenever there's a new video or something going on the site. And yeah, I've uploaded a whole lot of designs, and more should come very soon onto the Dastardly Quilt Studio site. So yeah, finally getting a bit organised with pantographs, which is a very good feeling. Okay. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you think.